The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. These are not just ancient words echoing through dusty scrolls or church pews. These words have been whispered on battlefields by trembling kings. They've been repeated by mothers in despair, by broken men staring into the silence of the night, hoping for some divine response. They're carved into tombstones, etched deep into the souls of those seeking refuge in the storms of life. But what if I told you this verse isn't just about religion? What if these words hold a deeper truth, a mental code, a mindset that, once understood, can completely shift how you experience wealth, lack, and even success? Napoleon Hill, author of the legendary book Think and Grow Rich, spent decades studying the minds of the world's most prosperous people. After interviewing over 500 millionaires, he noticed something they all shared: a belief that success begins in the mind. That faith isn't just a spiritual concept, it's a practical force. And Psalm 23 knew that long before any study. The Lord is my shepherd isn't poetic fluff, it's a declaration of identity. The psalmist is stating, with absolute certainty, who leads him, who provides for him, who directs his steps, and what comes next. I shall not want. Not, I hope I won't lack, or maybe I'll have enough. It's a confident, emotional, unshakable statement. I shall not want. That's what Hill called absolute belief. He famously wrote, "Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve." But he warned, it's not enough to imagine it once. You have to believe it with emotion, over and over, until that belief dominates your subconscious mind. Now pause and reflect. How many times have you recited Psalm 23 without truly believing that nothing would be missing in your life? How often do people speak powerful words, yet live under the grip of scarcity? Faith on Sundays, fear on Mondays, big dreams, small steps. What Hill discovered, and what the Bible has taught for centuries, is this: the mind must be convinced before reality can follow. This is the first pillar of transformation, faith as a creative force. Hill described faith as the antidote to failure. Why? Because it turns doubt into direction, fear into movement, and scarcity into abundance. And Psalm 23 affirms that, in every line, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." This isn't just belief, it's alignment. It's as if the psalm is saying, because I know who leads me, I no longer follow fear. That quiet conviction, that's the key. It rewires your subconscious. It shifts your vibration. It lifts you out of a survival mentality and plants you firmly in the path of real abundance. So why then do so many people still feel stuck in lack? Because there's a gap, a wide gap, between repeating a verse and living it. So many want change without transformation, prosperity without renewing their minds, harvest without planting new seeds of belief. Hill knew this. That's why he emphasized the power of autosuggestion, repeating empowering truths with emotion until they rewrite your inner identity. The Bible already confirmed it. Faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the Word. Repetition, depth, absorption. If you wake up every day saying, "It's hard, money never lasts, life's against me," then you're feeding a kind of faith, a faith in lack. But when you affirm with conviction, "I shall not want," even when your outer world screams otherwise, you send a deeper command to your mind. I trust, I persist, I rise. And that's when the invisible starts to move. Maybe right now, everything around you seems to contradict that promise. Maybe the bills are stacking up. Maybe your mind feels heavy. Maybe your faith feels thin. But let me tell you this: if you keep saying, "I shall not want," even through tears, even with your back against the wall, something inside you will begin to resist the fall. That's the mystery Hill uncovered. Success belongs to those who keep going, despite uncertainty. The kind of faith that changes lives is not blind. It's stubborn. It's persistent. It refuses to collapse when circumstances shake. And this isn't just theory. It's embedded in Psalm 23, word for word. The Lord is my shepherd. That's a declaration about who leads me. I shall not want. That's a choice about what I believe. Those two truths, when aligned, unlock a new level of peace and power. While the world runs desperately in pursuit of more money, more validation, more control, the psalmist introduces us to something far more powerful, the calm of someone who knows they're already cared for. And care doesn't mean sitting still. It means acting from trust. It's the foundation that allows for bold action without panic. It's as if the psalm says, you can work hard because lack no longer controls you. You can dream big because you know who sustains your steps. You can invest in yourself because your source is never dry. This faith isn't passive, it's dynamic. It's the same faith that fueled kings, prophets, inventors, and entrepreneurs. Faith that turned words into conviction, and conviction into reality. So if you've read this far, I want you to read that line again, with your whole heart. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. Now read it again, but this time as a decision, as a seed planted in your mind. Let it take root. And if something inside you knows it's time to flip the switch, here's what I want you to do. Type this right now. I shall not want. That one comment is more than a click. It's the start of a new internal conversation between you and your future. Because as Hill taught us, everything begins with a decision. And as the psalm continues, he makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. If the first line of Psalm 23 teaches us that faith is the foundation of abundance, then this second part reveals something even deeper. True prosperity begins in soul-level rest. But don't get it twisted. This rest isn't laziness or a comfort zone. It's clarity. It's alignment. It's the inner peace of someone who knows exactly where they're going and why they're going. Hill, in all his years of research, noticed something remarkable about high achievers. They were calm inside. Even before external success showed up, they had mental peace. They thought clearly. They weren't driven by urgency or anxiety. He called this mental mastery, or harmony with infinite intelligence. A noisy mind can't recognize clarity. An anxious soul can't see opportunity. That's why so many people stay busy, yet don't make progress. But look again at what the psalm says. He makes me lie down in green pastures. This isn't just a lovely image. It's a strategic pause. It's the picture of someone who, even surrounded by pressure and responsibilities, learns to rest without fearing loss. Have you noticed how the greatest leaders, the real ones, are calm by nature? They don't rush. They walk with direction. They don't talk endlessly. They speak with weight. They don't react impulsively. They choose how to respond. Hill emphasized that one of the greatest traits of a successful person is calm, decisive action. And that calmness, it comes from conviction, that quiet, inner knowing. If it hasn't arrived yet, it's because it's still being prepared. The problem today is that most people live in a constant state of urgency. They wake up late. They make decisions in fear. They skip steps. They compare their journey to everyone else's, and they end up surrounded by noise, distraction, and confusion. But call it productivity. But Psalm 23 offers a different rhythm. He leads me beside still waters. Notice, he doesn't push. He doesn't rush. He leads gently. Hill said something similar. The mind needs direction, not pressure. You don't need to be screamed into clarity. You need silence. You need space to think. You need to slow down to see the path. So pause with me right now. Take a breath. Close your eyes for just a moment and ask yourself, what are your green pastures today? Maybe it's a project that brings meaning, not just money. Maybe it's a more balanced life with less rushing and more presence. Or maybe it's simply being able to make decisions in peace, without the weight of other people's expectations. And what about the still waters? That's the image of a soul in harmony, a heart that doesn't need to prove anything, a mind that doesn't sabotage itself with racing thoughts, but trusts the timing of life. Hill taught that clarity is one of the most powerful weapons in the hands of a visionary. When you know what you want, clearly, deeply, purposefully, the entire universe begins to align. But when your mind is split, noisy, and full of confusion, everything becomes slower, heavier, harder. Peace is the channel where ideas flow. Stillness is the soil where solutions grow. Direction is only revealed to those who learn to silence the noise. That's why Jesus withdrew to pray. That's why prophets spent days in silence. That's why high-level leaders today practice morning stillness, visualization, digital fasting. They've learned the truth. If you never stop to listen, you'll run forever without knowing where you're going. Now, ask yourself, have you been allowing yourself to rest in your green pastures? Have you trusted enough to be led without anxiety? Are you living in a rush or with intention? That's the difference between a reactive life and a guided life. Maybe you've been trying to do everything with your own hands for years, and now you're exhausted. Or maybe you're standing at a crossroads, needing to make a big decision, but your mind is so loud that you can't hear your own intuition anymore. If that's you, then hear what the psalm is saying. Rest in trust. Be led again. Silence the noise. Hill used to say that faith without direction is wasted energy, but faith with clarity, that becomes powerful, focused action. And here's a key truth. You don't need to wait for life to slow down in order to feel peace. You can start now. Close your eyes. Take 2 deep breaths and say this with intention. Lord, lead me beside still waters. Show me the way. Make that your habit. Speak it. Write it. See it in your mind. And if this message stirred something in your spirit, I want you to comment right now. I choose peace over pressure. Because true progress doesn't come from chaos. It flows from consciousness and faith. The next part of the psalm will show you how to walk through the darkest valleys without fear. But before that, learn to trust the timing of heaven. Stillness is where wisdom appears. Peace is the soil where your next level is planted. And everything begins when you stop running and learn to be led again. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. This is perhaps the most quoted line in all of Psalm 23, and one of the most powerful. It marks the moment where the journey gets real, where we're no longer lying down in green pastures or strolling beside still waters. Now we're walking through shadow, through pain, through the unknown. But notice something. The psalmist doesn't say, if I walk. He says, even though I walk, because valleys aren't a matter of if, but when. Anyone walking with purpose will eventually pass through the dark. The valley isn't punishment, it's part of the process, and how you walk through it defines everything. Napoleon Hill spent a lifetime studying what separated extraordinary people from the rest, and a clear pattern emerged. Nearly all of them had to walk through fire before they rose. Moments of pain, rejection, failure, betrayal, scarcity, heartbreak. These weren't exceptions. They were turning points. But the difference wasn't what they faced. It was how they faced it. Hill believed every challenge carries a seed of transformation. He wrote that most people are held back not by lack of talent, but by fear. Not the loud kind of fear, but the quiet one that sits beneath your decisions. Fear of not having enough, fear of being judged, fear of becoming irrelevant, fear of getting sick, fear of losing someone, fear of what happens when it all ends. These fears wear masks. They show up as hesitation, overthinking, perfectionism, or playing it safe. They whisper doubts that grow louder over time, and unless you confront them, they'll quietly build a cage around your life. The psalmist chooses a different response. He doesn't pretend the valley isn't dark. He simply refuses to let fear lead. He says, I will not be afraid. That is not the absence of fear. It is leadership over fear. It's the same kind of strength that kept Edison experimenting after 1,000 failures. That helped Henry Ford rise again after every setback. That fueled Walt Disney when everyone told him his dream was impossible. They didn't escape the valley. They walked through it, eyes open, faith anchored, vision intact. Because real faith doesn't wait for perfect conditions. It moves forward anyway. Psalm 23 gives us the secret. For you are with me. That is the source of strength. The awareness that you are not alone, that there is a presence walking beside you, through the pain, through the fear, through the uncertainty. So let me ask you this. What part of your life have you put on hold because fear took the wheel? What decision are you delaying because the path looks unclear? What idea have you pushed away because you're afraid to be misunderstood? What version of you have you silenced because you weren't sure you'd be enough? This part of the psalm is not poetic comfort. It's a wake-up call. It's the invitation to walk boldly, even when your knees are shaking. It's the reminder that courage is not about feeling brave. It's about moving forward when everything inside you wants to hide. Maybe what you need most right now isn't a guarantee. It's a step, not a map, but movement. Not more answers, just more presence. Because the text doesn't say it's the valley of death, it says the shadow of death. And where there's a shadow, there's still light. The valley you're facing right now is not your final destination. It's the space between the promise and the fulfillment, between who you were and who you're becoming. And in that space, fear will try to speak louder than your purpose, unless you hold on to one truth. You are with me. So if this part of the journey speaks to you, say it out loud or write it in the comments. Even in the valley, I move forward. Not because everything makes sense, but because you are not walking alone. That one declaration could change everything. It's the beginning of real courage, the moment faith stops being an idea and becomes your way through. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. This final verse isn't just a beautiful closing to a poetic journey. It's a promise, a seal, a declaration of arrival. After the stillness, after the valley, after the battle to believe, this is the reward of those who don't give up. Notice the language. Goodness and mercy shall follow me. Not visit occasionally, not show up randomly, but follow me every day. This is what Napoleon Hill tried to explain in every one of his teachings. Success is not an accident. It's not a one-time win. It's the result of alignment with unshakable principles. Principles that create consistent outcomes and ripple far beyond your personal achievements. That's why Hill talked so much about purpose. Because prosperity built on ego always fades. But prosperity rooted in mission, that lasts. Look again at the psalmist's words. Goodness and mercy don't come from outside. They're not just blessings that drop in from heaven. They're the fruit of a life lived in alignment, with faith, with purpose, with presence. This kind of life leaves a trail behind, a trail of healing, a trail of impact, a trail of transformation. It's not about being impressive. It's about being intentional. It's about choosing daily to walk with integrity, speak with truth, and build something that outlives you. Hill believed that true wealth is never measured by what you own, but by what you leave behind. And the psalmist agrees, I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. This isn't just about heaven or eternity. It's about living in a state of alignment right now. It's the peace of someone who knows they're anchored in something eternal. The strength of someone who no longer chases trends, opinions, or temporary highs, but instead stands on values that don't change. Think about it. The most respected men and women throughout history weren't the richest. They were the most consistent. The ones who lived by conviction, not convenience. The ones who built slowly, patiently, with vision, the ones who thought beyond their own bank accounts and left behind something more than wealth, inspiration. Hill used to say, "The most valuable kind of success is the one you build on the inside and share with the world." Money is a byproduct of the value you create. Legacy is the mirror of a mind that stayed faithful to its mission. And that's exactly what the psalmist reveals in this last verse. When you walk with God, you live with abundance. And when you live with abundance, you become a source of goodness. But notice again, the verse doesn't say that goodness and mercy will follow you only on good days. It says, all the days of my life. That means through the highs and the lows, through the breakthroughs and the breakdowns, through the green pastures and the valleys of shadows. Goodness and mercy are not conditional. They are constant. That's what it means to live an intentional life, a life where you're not just chasing results, but becoming someone who attracts favor by who you are, not just what you do. This is the full journey. You start by declaring, "I shall not want." You end by affirming, "Goodness follows me," because the mind that believes creates, the soul that trusts endures, and the heart that stays aligned multiplies. So if this final part speaks to your spirit, I want you to say it out loud or write it now. My legacy will be greater than my ambition. That's not a conclusion. That's a beginning. Because those who understand Psalm 23 don't just survive, they build. They don't just gather, they give. They don't just chase, they carry something eternal. And as Hill taught us so well, true success belongs to those who plant ideas that transform lives. Let's step back and look at the full picture. Psalm 23 isn't just poetry. It's a blueprint, a map of inner transformation, a guide from scarcity to strength, from fear to faith, from pressure to purpose. It begins with a declaration, "The Lord is my shepherd." That's not just a phrase, it's identity. It's the soul saying, "I know who leads me. I know who provides for me. I know who's in control." And then comes the effect of that certainty, "I shall not want." Because when you know where your source is, anxiety loses its grip. When your identity is rooted in something eternal, neediness fades. This doesn't mean you'll never face struggle. It means you're no longer defined by it. You stop operating in survival mode. You stop chasing approval. You stop proving your worth through performance or possessions. Instead, you begin to rest in trust. You learn to breathe, to wait, to believe. And then something shifts. You're led beside still waters. Not pushed, not rushed, but gently guided into peace, into rhythm, into clarity. This is where motion meets rest, where purpose replaces panic. But that journey will always take you through valleys, not as punishment, but as process. And when you walk through that darkness, through the disappointment, the loss, the waiting, the fear, you come face to face with a choice. Freeze or move forward. Give up or keep going. Be led by fear or be grounded in faith. That's when something inside you says, "I will not fear." Not because the danger is gone, but because you're no longer alone. For you are with me. And when you walk like that, not rushed, not desperate, but steady, something changes. Goodness begins to follow you. Mercy begins to cover you. Not once in a while, but every single day. And you realize that this kind of life doesn't come from chasing. It comes from alignment, from being anchored, from choosing to live in presence, not in panic. Eventually, you stop measuring success by what you gain and start measuring it by what you give, by what you leave behind. Because true prosperity is not about accumulation, it's about overflow. And when that becomes your rhythm, you dwell in something deeper than comfort. You dwell in purpose. You dwell in the presence of God, not just someday, but right now. This is what Psalm 23 unlocks. A new identity, a new posture, a new rhythm, a new courage, a new legacy. Not because life gets easier, but because you get clearer. You stop defining yourself by what's missing and start walking in the truth of who you are. And when that happens, life begins to follow your lead. You were not placed on this earth just to survive. You weren't meant to drift, to hustle endlessly, to measure your value by how much you can accumulate. You were made to leave a mark, a legacy, a trail of light in a world that often feels dark and cold. Psalm 23 is not about religion. It's about remembrance. It's about returning to the truth of who you are and what you're capable of when you walk with faith. This is not a psalm for fragile days. It's a psalm for warriors, for builders, for those who are done living small and silent. The Lord is my shepherd. That means I don't follow fear anymore. That means I don't beg life for approval. That means I no longer measure success by external applause, but by internal alignment. I shall not want. That means I don't live from a place of need. I live from a place of knowing. I don't need to chase what's already being added to my life as I walk in truth. He makes me lie down in green pastures. That means I rest when the world tells me to grind. I trust when the noise says to panic. I move slow, not because I'm lazy, but because I'm led. He leads me beside still waters. That means I choose peace, not the shallow kind that comes from having no problems, the deep kind that comes from being grounded in something eternal, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. That means I don't run from difficulty. I walk through it with open eyes, with steady steps, with faith that doesn't flinch. I will fear no evil. That means I'm not ruled by what could go wrong. I'm ruled by the presence that walks with me. You are with me. That means I never take a single step alone. Surely goodness and mercy will follow me. That means I'm not chasing blessings. They're chasing me because of who I've become all the days of my life. That means this isn't seasonal. This isn't just when things are easy. This is every day, in every circumstance, because I've made a decision about who I am and who I serve. I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. That means I'm done living like a stranger to grace. I live planted, rooted, anchored, not tossed around by the market, by trends, by fear, or by doubt. And that kind of life, it speaks even when you're silent. It teaches even when you're gone. It blesses even those who never knew your name. That's what Napoleon Hill meant when he said that success is never just about money. It's about the lives you influence, the courage you awaken, the truth you carry, the pain you heal, the doors you open, not just for yourself, but for others. You weren't created to exist quietly. You were created to become a force of peace, of clarity, of unwavering faith. So now the choice is yours. You can spend one more day chasing shadows, or you can stand still long enough to remember everything you need is already inside you. And what follows you now isn't fear, isn't scarcity, isn't comparison. What follows you is goodness. What covers you is mercy. What leads you is grace. You were born for this journey. You were born to be led, not lost, to build, not break, to carry light, not hide in the dark. Let the world chase its own definition of success. You were made to leave a legacy that outlives your ambition. This isn't the end of a message. This is the beginning of a decision. Because now that you've seen the truth, you can't go back to living small. You can't unsee the path. You can't unknow the power that lives in you. You were never meant to be ruled by fear. You were never meant to live begging life for permission. You were born to walk in alignment, to rise in identity, to speak with quiet certainty, and move with deliberate peace. The words of Psalm 23 weren't written for decoration. They were written to be declared, to be believed, to be lived. The Lord is my shepherd, so I release control. I shall not want, so I let go of lack. He makes me lie down, so I embrace rest. He leads me, so I stop forcing my way. Even though I walk, so I accept the valleys. I will fear no evil, so I confront the lies. You are with me, so I stop walking alone. Surely goodness and mercy follow me, so I stop chasing what's already coming. And I dwell, so I live like I belong. This is not wishful thinking. This is spiritual alignment. This is mental clarity. This is the posture of someone who knows that heaven walks with them, not someday, but today. And from this posture, everything changes. Your relationships, your finances, your habits, your confidence, your sense of time, your direction, your legacy. You no longer rush because you know what's yours cannot be missed. You no longer panic because you know who's walking with you. You no longer shrink because you've remembered who you are. And so, this isn't just the end of a reading. It's the start of a new rhythm, one where your steps are no longer guided by noise, but by peace. No longer pushed by fear, but led by faith. No longer obsessed with outcomes, but anchored in identity. So take a breath, stand still for a moment, feel your feet on the ground, lift your head again, and remember this: you were created to live in abundance, to lead with peace, to walk through valleys and still rise, to be followed by goodness and mercy, to be rooted in something stronger than circumstance, to dwell in presence, to live with purpose, to finish empty, because you gave everything you were born to give. And if your spirit agrees with this, then say it one last time, not as a hope, but as a vow. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Now go live like that truth is already real, because it is.